Hey, my friends. My family received some devastating health news this past week. I'm telling you this for a couple of reasons. I'm not sure how much attention and energy I'll be able to muster over the next several months to keep the channel going. As you know, I've been faithfully putting 2 videos out per week, every Wednesday and every Sunday, and I'm not sure I'll be able to keep that up. And after this video, who knows if and when I'll ever release another one. I hope to. And maybe somehow miraculously I'll be able to stay on my regular schedule. That's my hope. The channel has been a stabilizing outlet for me, and engaging with all of you has helped confirm and affirm many of my arguments and my hypotheses. And you guys have lifted me up when I've needed it. You've helped me feel not so alone. So thank you. The channel has been an important part of my life, and I hope to continue with it. But a lot of unknowns ahead, so we'll just have to see how this goes. I may use the time to break certain videos I've done into small clips and push those out to help keep the channel visible and growing. And in the meantime, watch videos you haven't seen yet, share them, do all the things. If you believe in the mission of this channel, then I'm asking for your help and support now more than ever. I had a commenter say just this morning that he hopes that religious trauma makes the DSM-6. If you don't know what that is, the DSM-6 refers to the potential 6th edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, DSM, a widely used medical reference for diagnosing mental health conditions. I know that religious trauma has become a more common topic of discussion in the therapeutic mental health space, and we're seeing a rise in specifically religious trauma counselors, which is definitely progress. So let's keep it going. If you've been considering reading On Monsters and Phantoms, it's my memoir about severe religious trauma and deconversion from Christianity, then now's the time. I get a tiny little royalty from every book sold, and though I am fortunate to have good health insurance through my employer, the out-of-pocket medical expenses for what we're facing have already been piling up beyond what we can afford, quite honestly. So every little bit helps. Thank you in advance. The link to the book on Amazon is below in the description. And maybe one day I'll be able to share with you more details about what's going on. I process best through sharing, as you all well know. I've hung all my dirty laundry and secrets out there publicly as we talk about religious trauma, so stay tuned and maybe I can share more details and information as we move forward. And believe me, this new crisis has launched me back several years, a regression of sorts, to the heights of my religious trauma, into being tempted to think that what is happening, and it's not directly happening to me personally, is a result of God's anger, wrath, and punishment. I can easily back that up with 100 scriptures. I have to remind myself many times a day that that's not what this is. None of that's real. It's just life. Regression for the traumatized is, I suppose, always possible, but I don't have to stay there. Old patterns die hard, and I'm okay with admitting that to you. That's part of our journey. I mean, isn't it? 2 steps forward and sometimes 1 step back, but then 2 more steps forward. So the other thing that happens when you're confronted directly with mortality, and this marks the 4th time in the past 14 years I've been in this spot, either through my own health crisis or through a member of my family. Well, mortality tends to shine a bright light on our perspectives, doesn't it? And that's what today's video is about. What once seemed important or relevant may lose meaning suddenly, and every conviction you've ever had is now on the table for deeper scrutiny. Your brain, at least my brain, attempts to shuffle things around and reprioritize things, sometimes chaotically, without any good rationale. It's a very destabilizing pattern, and this, of course, is why a mind like mine, one of melancholic rumination, is prone to religious trauma. It's so difficult to stay in the present rather than focus on future what-ifs, and I thought I knew what nihilism was before the events of the past week. That was child's play compared to what I'm experiencing now. I'm struggling to find meaning in anything, including making this video. HG, so you admit it. Walking away from God leads to nihilism. Gotcha. Nope. I was my most nihilistic when I believed God was sentencing me to hell. Talk about a valueless reality, or even a devalued reality. Thankfully, I don't believe that anymore. There is no greater nihilism, in my opinion, than when you believe your creator has kicked you to the curb. At least now I can recognize my nihilism, I can name it, and I've developed tools to combat it. Thanks, Britt Hartley. I don't say this to shock or scare anyone. Raw honesty and plunging the depths of human emotion and experience has always been front and center on this channel. And today is no different. I've had to stare down the barrel of mortality many times now, and each time, even as a deconverted apostate, some of the same questions and fears, if I'm being honest, arise. I want to share all this with you today, in part for your advice, in part to help me process my own emotions, and in part to help gain solid footing as I journey down the very difficult road ahead. So I'll do my best to keep this video coherent, but my mind is all over the place right now. I have what Buddhists would call a monkey mind. The good news is that I'm aware of it, and the other good news is that I've gained some wisdom over the years as to how to combat it. For me, talking it out, even with complete strangers, helps me regain some control and clarity. So thank you for being here and for listening. And if any of you have any words for me, I'd love to hear them in the comments. Okay. So what all this facing mortality business has called to mind, among a million other things, is this idea that to Christians, I'm going to hell because I've rejected Christ. I made that decision not because I wanted to sin and be my own God, but as a matter of self-preservation from the suicidal ideation that religious trauma brought. But to God, rejection is rejection. The reasons don't matter, and it's not like he'll have compassion and excuse me for apostasy because of religious trauma. It's not like he gets it and understands how his character and word can and does breed trauma for millions, and he's got a soft spot for those who've rejected him because of religious trauma. Many of you Christians remind me of that in just about every video I release. I'm doomed to hell regardless of the reasons I deconverted. This brings me to the idea of free will, this idea that many of you Christians remind me of, that God granting humans free will, the ability to choose Christ or reject him, is actually an act of God's love, meaning he doesn't force people to love him, but gives them the freedom to choose to love him, and what could be more loving than that? I addressed what I believe are the inherent flaws in that premise in this video, Is Free Will a Curse? Namely that punishing someone with eternal conscious torment for not choosing or rejecting God is not a fair choice. I've covered this before, but I want to revisit it, and that is, I would absolutely 100% be fine if the Christian God exists and I have no choice but to exist within his paradigm of reality, with that God programming me to love him. I'd be 100% fine with God making me an automaton. Christians think this idea of being a robot or an automaton is a bad thing. While I get that argument, I've said before that under this construct, God could make it so that I don't know any difference. I wouldn't know what it means to be programmed to love someone, and I wouldn't even care. I'd be blissfully unaware. I get the arguments against that. Heck, I've made some of them myself. But being programmed to love God and not knowing any better is a far better option than having the ability to reject him because of religious trauma and then getting punished with eternal conscious torment as a result. If there is this Christian God and there is a hell of eternal conscious torment, there is no way in hell that I'm making a choice for that over whatever a blissful eternal heaven can be. I still have problems with the concept of heaven, but if you put a gun to my head and said, choose one, I suppose I would choose heaven, and I would then tell this God to mold my mind in such a way that whatever problems and fears I have of heaven, he'd fix, whatever that can mean. If you want a nice, long, and deep dive into those problems, watch this video. That's part of my introductory 10-video series on religious trauma. Look, in no universe or reality would I ever choose eternal conscious torment if it actually existed. Here's the thing. Even as a Christian for 25 years, knowing I was safe from the torment of hell, at least until the worst of my trauma set in, I still feared the hell out of hell. Just knowing that this God created such a place of punishment, that he even thought it up, that he was capable of this level of torture, made me terrified of this God. Not the kind of healthy, reverential fear Christians will tell you is a good thing, though I had that too, but the kind of fear that questions the sanity, compassion, love, mercy, grace, and peace Christians claim this God is. My mindset as a Christian was, I don't understand how you can call yourself love, yet imagine and invent such a torturous punishment for those who reject you and call that justice, but I trust that this will one day make sense to me. Well, it never did, despite my prayers for it to make sense. No Christian apologetic definition of God's justice has ever made sense and satisfied me. That God's love and justice, which often takes the form of excessively brutal eternal vengeance and wrath, can ever be reconciled. You can't be perfectly merciful and perfectly just at the same time. If God is perfect, then he exhibits both mercy and justice in perfect measure, which negate each other. I've had many Christian commenters throw the marriage analogy at me. H.G., would you force your wife to love you? No, you'd want her to freely choose to love you, right? God's the same. Well, let's break that down. If my wife fell out of love with me because I emotionally damaged her through fear tactics, threats of eternal conscious torment, cursing everything I created, constant displays of my violent, brutal, savage nature, my rabid inconsistency of applying my standards of morality, intentionally sustaining my sworn enemy so that he could wreak havoc on people's lives and destroy them on my watch, threatening people with an unforgivable sin, telling women that they shouldn't speak in church, regulating chattel slavery, ordering genocide after genocide, killing children, making it clear that I blind, confuse, and delude people out of my anger, telling the sick and the lame that they're not worthy to enter my presence, clearly hardening hearts to achieve outrageously and unnecessarily violent outcomes, creating people I already know will be objects of my wrath, and even substantiating what is intuitively immoral. After all that, then I told her that my love for her was conditional only upon her love and worship back to me, and then I condemned her to hell for rejecting me. I would be an absolute monster. I know, Christians. In the only analogy that works for you, I, the husband, am perfect and perfectly good and desire nothing but only the best loving relationship with my wife imaginable. And I provide for her everything she needs. I protect her. I cherish her. I value her. I esteem her. There's not a violent or wrathful bone in my body towards her. But in your analogy, she'd fall out of love with me because, she doesn't want that love. She'd rather screw other men, binge drink, steal, tell the world I'm a sadistic monster, lie, murder, and whatever else. That is a false analogy to what I'm describing as it relates to religious trauma. It's thoughtless, unfair, and dishonest. I'm not saying it never happens that a wife acts this way or a husband, but there's far more nuance here that needs to be taken into consideration. Start making fair and accurate analogies, and let's go from there. But let's go back to scenario one, where the wife falls out of love with me and leaves me because she's terrified of me. She cannot trust the character I've displayed. If I couldn't win her back to loving me by changing my ways in ways I know would help her regain love and trust for me, which God won't do because he's immutable. His ways are the same yesterday, today, and forever. But let's say I, the husband, or God, chose to change whatever new promises I could now make to my wife to try to win her love back. If I failed to convince her with those promises because she's already been so emotionally damaged, then refuse to use my supernatural power to interfere with her free will to make her choose to love me again rather than reject me out of her terror, then I hope I would have enough sense and compassion to simply let her go and live the life that she chooses to live. And again, not a life of sin and debauchery, but one of peace and clarity and intention. The last thing that I would do to her is condemn her to eternal conscious torment for making her choice to reject me. I know one thing I would do for sure, and that is try to understand the factors that led to her making that choice. Maybe I'd look in the mirror and realize I am a tyrannical bastard. Maybe I'd realize that some things I do and say can and do traumatize people. Maybe I'd realize that she had some other internal struggles that she was yet unable to work out emotionally, mentally, and psychologically. And this is where all that cognitive dissonance took her. After all, I created her mind. I should know it better than anyone. I would hope to gain at least somewhat of a better understanding. I mean, Christians, your God is omniscient, so he should have that understanding. But does he? Does he have the compassion and empathy necessary to understand all that? Or are his ways so above our ways that he can only see it as a binary option? Love me, you're saved. Reject me, and you're damned. And I don't care why you rejected me. But anyway, if I couldn't do all that changing and convincing for my wife, and I was left to wallow in my anger over her rejection, I still wouldn't condemn her to eternal conscious torment. So, HG, you think you know better than God? That you can judge better than God? Yes, it's called empathy, compassion, rationality. It's pretty simple. So, HG, criminals shouldn't be punished? Well, I never said that. For one, the wife who rejects her husband out of terror isn't a criminal. She's human. And I also don't believe any finite criminal committing finite crimes deserves eternal punishment. That's not justice. If I were God and claimed that it's my will that none should perish, then I'm making damn sure that I enact everything I can to ensure that none perish. I am the all-powerful, all-benevolent God. That's on me, not humans, even if that means intervening in their free will, which God does all the time. So, Christians, stop claiming your God is a hands-off God who doesn't manipulate your free will to achieve an outcome he desires. It's all over the Bible. Remember, according to your own holy book, God chose you. You didn't choose him. And if you think you chose him without his intervening in your free will leading you to make that choice, read your Bible a little more closely. Sin makes it impossible for us to choose him. It separates us from him. He has to violate your free will such that you'd answer his call and choose him. Here's another reflection. God is able to sustain himself infinitely in perfection, whether we love him or not. He obviously is not grieved by the billions of people he sent to hell, to the point where that grief warrants a different course of action or a changing of his ways. He doesn't regret creating hell and sending people there, which is odd because he expresses regret over creating people who become sinful, and he starts over with a flood that didn't actually change anything. He's content with his hell paradigm. My question is, what does God gain by sentencing people to eternal conscious torment? What's in it for him? He needs nothing. He can't gain from anything. So what's the actual point? Does it actually please him to wreak vengeance and justice on those who rejected him? Does he sentence people to hell to prove himself powerful and righteous to those with him in heaven? Why is that necessary? Does he need that self-affirmation? Do we really value the power of a dictator who parades around his wrath on full display for the world to see? Or do we consider that dictator a maniacal monster? What actually is the value God derives from sending people to hell? Well, H.G., what else is he supposed to do with those who willfully choose not to spend eternity with him? Where else should he sentence their souls? Why wouldn't they deserve eternal conscious torment to prove his righteousness? These are the questions I get from Christians. What does an all-powerful, all-loving, all-righteous, merciful God of grace and compassion gain from sustaining hell and the souls tortured in it? Why is that paradigm even necessary? How does this paradigm demonstrate the goodness of God? I know apologists have provided answers which basically boil down to God's worthiness and righteousness is best demonstrated in his wrathful, brutal justice while rewarding those on his side. Heck, souls in heaven, we're told, will actually rejoice with God, knowing their apostate loved ones are getting their just punishment in hell for rejecting God. And as a Christian, I was on board with that until I rejected God out of terror, like the wife rejecting her husband out of terror. This idea of rejoicing in heaven with God while unbelievers get their just punishment in hell for eternity does not endear me to this God. It shouldn't endear anyone to this God. It's a sick construct we would not embrace in real life. As I say this, I think of my own beautiful daughter being raped and murdered by a serial killer. And if I were to confront that serial killer in court, you better damn well believe I'd want his ass to suffer in hell for eternity so that he experiences the pain he's brought to me and my family. And that's just it. Does God experience a level of pain from our apostasy such that the only just punishment is an eternity in hell? How can an all-powerful God be moved to such pain when he requires nothing and needs nothing? To reduce him to experiencing this level of pain makes him, well, human. And to want to torture people because of it makes him even more human. And as a human, and I've said this before, even about Hitler, I would never endorse eternal conscious torment for anyone. If I had all the power, I would see to it that eternal conscious torment is never a just option, no matter the finite human crime, even one of rejecting God. I'd have to believe I was above that. This health crisis once again forced me to contend with these philosophical and theological questions. Those Christians who paste me in the comments with scriptures they think makes all this make sense have not stared down the barrel of religious trauma, I assure you. And if they have, and they came out on the other side, on God's side, I promise you they have learned to reject, neglect, ignore, or subjectively reinterpret Scripture as a way of maintaining their salvation and proper standing with God, most likely because they're still terrorized by thoughts and reality of hell. Avoidance is a strong motivator, and it's on the table as a human response to trauma, so I get it. Anyway, I hope in giving you this simple example of a husband and wife, you can see how the idea of God giving us free will to choose or reject him is not a choice at all. When the choice to not choose him is met with eternal conscious torment and suffering, it's obviously not a choice. A real choice would be for God to simply let you go and exist in whatever state you're in, rather than intentionally subject you to eternal conscious torment. I know that's a whole different philosophical discussion and theological one, but hopefully you get where I'm going with that. This video is going longer than I thought, but it may be my last one for a while or ever. I hope it's not. So we're hanging this laundry out there. So let's end with some confessions. Since I don't know what tomorrow holds, my assumption is that a perfectly loving and holy God would prevent, even through intervening in free will, which God does all the time, would prevent one of his children from straying, from falling away. God tells us he will lose none of his children, and that he'll chase after the one sheep that strays from the 99. And the angels in heaven rejoice when that sheep is returned to the flock. Here's the deal. I remain open to this God, if I'm wrong and if he exists, to show up, meet me where I'm at. And I have just over 90 videos plus a book that publicly declares where I'm at. It's no secret, and he knows what it will take to change my mind and heal me. And I've publicly declared here in this video that I am willing to be programmed to love him if that means avoiding eternal conscious torment, if it's real. So let's dance. Show up. I confess to this God, if he exists, and to you, that upon deeper study and reflection, mixed with personal experience both past and present, that the God of the Bible, Yahweh, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, became terrifyingly wrathful, unfair, inconsistent, maniacal, untrustworthy, condescending, unloving, brutal, condemning, confusing, and terrorizing the more I leaned in and the more I learned about him. I was aware of this happening while I was a Christian. Y'all have no idea how desperately I prayed and begged God for help, wisdom, strength, conviction, forgiveness, and every other thing Christians accuse me of not or never doing or having. I prayed for God to step in and help, to change my mind and heart. I took all this to him in prayer. I talked to counselors and elders and pastors. I let them in on what was happening. The more they counseled me, the more things didn't add up, and the more their counsel contributed to the contradictions and irreconcilable passages that were piling up. So, who didn't show up? Who didn't intervene? Who allowed Satan to get the best of me even when I begged every minute of every day to be delivered from evil, as it says in the Lord's Prayer? Well, your problem, HG, is that you didn't have enough faith. You stopped choosing to believe. So the prayers asking God for an extra measure of faith and to help me in my unbelief didn't work? I mean, come on, Christians, you have to do better. And we'll leave it here. I think this is why I get so frustrated with Christian comments. I mean, you guys have no idea how you sound, so condemning, so sure that I didn't do all the right things in all the right ways, so sure that I'm unaware of the scriptures you quoted me. And to be fair, Not every Christian comes at me like this. I'm painting with a broad brush. Some of you convey your sorrow that I got caught up in fundamentalism or the wrong church or studied the wrong Bible or was in the wrong denomination or I learned under false teachers. I consider all that, but then I recall how many times during my 25 years as a Christian I prayed for God's wisdom to literally avoid all that, for the ability to spot deception and false teachers. And here we are. I've got now hundreds of hours of content about religious trauma on this channel. For now, I've done all I can to inform and educate, both through citing the scholarly research and providing subjective anecdotal experiences, my own and yours. I'll sign off for now and maybe forever with this: the loss of connection, security, hope, all those things that are wrapped up in the Christian experience is utterly devastating. And that's the thing people don't quite understand yet about religious trauma. And I touched on that in my last video related to Pargament's theory. It's not just the loss of those things, but now, according to Christian belief, and many of you tell me in the comments, I'm going to be eternally punished for all this because I made a conscious and rational decision to turn away from what became a highly disruptive, destructive, and maladaptive belief system as a matter of self-preservation. I am now going to be eternally consciously tormented and punished for that decision. It is the epitome of adding insult to injury. Maybe we'll meet again. I hope we do. Maybe I'll have another video out Wednesday. Who knows? I've got the fight of my life in front of me. So stay strong, you guys. Stay courageous. Our message is out there. Let's continue to give it power so that those suffering from religious trauma know that there's hope, and those who dismiss it know that it's real. I love you guys.